Hello, I'm David Grayson, one of the co-editors of Cranfield on Corporate Sustainability. And today I'm interviewing Mike Bernon, who is the lead author of the chapter about supply chain and logistics and sustainability. Mike, what are typically the biggest problems that companies face when we're talking about sustainability in the supply chain?
I think supply chain has a huge impact on sustainability. You can see it's where we consume most of the natural resources as the raw materials for inputs for products. It's where we consume huge amounts of energy in the production phase, and also in transportation, sending the goods to market, huge amounts of CO2. Also, you can see on the social side, the people within our operations, and also within the local communities around that. But what we've seen in supply chains over the last 10, 15 years is this real move to offshoring and outsourcing. So a lot of the operations that we used to own ourselves are now in the hands of third parties. And also we've really seen this globalization. So rather than being local for local, a lot of these operations are far away from us. So managing these global networks in a sustainable way is increasingly very difficult for us to do, to understand all of the impacts we have in companies that we may not own.
So what are the critical steps that a sensible management team would be taking in terms of addressing sustainability through the supply chain? What are the key things to think about?
Well, I think firstly, we used to always think about supply chain as being 5 key processes. It's plan, there's sourcing, making, delivering and return. But if we really want to think about sustainability, I believe that we now got to think about the full product life cycle. So we have to start a little bit earlier. We have to start thinking about the design not only of our products, but also the design of our supply chain to understand how we can reduce these impacts. But maybe now we've really got to think a bit further. What about consumer use? Something we've never really thought about before. But when we think for some of our products, 75% of the energy consumption may not be in source, make and deliver, but could well be in consumer use. And of course, now we talk about end of life. How can we think about recycling our products? How can we even think about closing the loop? Can we bring the materials back at end of life as the input for our supply chain going forward? So the primary 5 processes are still really important, but we need to have this full product life cycle view. We then need to think about how we can map and measure and understand the impacts across the whole chain, and then think about strategies to mitigate those impacts.
So what I'm hearing there is that if somebody's working in supply chain and logistics, actually they've got to be now really well plugged in and connected with colleagues in design and innovation on the one hand, but also marketing on the other hand, in terms of working with consumers for sustainable consumption, but also end of life, what happens when consumers are finished with the particular products that they are that they're using. Any practical tips that you've seen seems to work in terms of helping companies to make sense of all of these issues of sustainability in the supply chain?
It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one. But for me, first of all, we need to go back. I believe it's a mindset change. I think for supply chain people, what we've got to now start thinking about is saying that sustainability is good news for supply chain. It's a great way of thinking about, first of all, can I mitigate risk? Can I actually take cost out of the supply chain by using sustainability as a new lens to identify cost reduction opportunities? It's, quite obvious to say that if we reduce the amount of miles we are running for transportation, not only do we reduce our costs, but of course we reduce the amount of CO2. So there's a direct relationship there. So I think there's a mindset change. It also leads to competitive advantage, new products, new offerings through the supply chain for our customers to buy. So that would be my first thing. The second thing would then be, as I said before, is to understand how we can see all of this. And maybe again in mindset change, perhaps talk about collaboration, David. Maybe what we now need to think about is collaborating in a different way, not only with our existing supply chain partners, but perhaps by sector. Could it be that now we really need to think about collaborating with our competitors to take out some of these or mitigate some of these environmental and social factors, working with competitors? Now that's quite a big change for us to go through, but I think that's the way we should go.
So Mike, actually what I'm hearing there is not just one, but 2 shifts in mindset. the mindset shift about sustainability as being just good business, and then secondly, a mindset shift about also seeing your competitors sometimes as collaborators. And you've got to develop the skills for collaboration too. Mike Bernon, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.